Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life. This week, I am going to be talking about life reviews. I've chosen this topic simply because I am very, very much aware just how much uncertainty, frustration, confusion, and challenges, as well as events around the world that are impacting us both emotionally, mentally, and at times physically. Now, what can I say about a life review? I would suggest you practice it regularly, because if you think about it, a life review is something that would enable you to see where you are in your life. It will enable you to perhaps listen to those unconscious thoughts that are floating around in the ethos, I suppose, is one way of putting it, except it's in your mind, that is there, but just on the peripherals. Now, I was speaking to my coach this morning, and I kept saying that it felt as though I was stopping myself. I've been saying for months that I was going to do more videos. I have been encouraged to do more videos. My beautiful friend and marketing advisor, Antonella, has been saying, do more videos. But there was something within me that was like, not going to do that. You're not going to do that. And yet I do the podcast. I do podcast interviews myself. But why wasn't I willing to do those videos? So we were talking about what was likely to be causing it. Now, if you know me, you know I very much rely on my intuition, my own inner guidance, my guides as such, because I do have guides who pop in and say, oi, listen to this, or look at this, or keep reminding me of things that have happened. And those reminders usually relate to something that I am needing to deal with. In this instance, what came up was rejection, which I find fascinating, simply based on the reality of I've worked on rejection for myself. I've worked with clients around rejection, but I kept getting images appearing, sometimes in my sleep, sometimes sort of when I'm sitting quietly and reviewing things. There was just this moment of friends that had disappeared, had ghosted me in my life. And it was like, well, why are they appearing? What is it that's so relevant that they have to appear now to remind me? And that's what they were doing. They were reminding me that I had been rejected. I had been ghosted for no apparent reason. So anyway, we continued the discussion. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, so it's to do with rejection. It's to do with people that I've known and I've got on really well with, and then suddenly they've disappeared. And then I got this image of centuries ago. It felt like centuries ago anyway. And it was like this impression of having the herbs and crystals and things like that surrounding me. And I do know from my previous experiences of going into the past that I have been a healer, particularly a shamanic kind of healer, which is basically what I work with now. And it was like, I can't prove what I do other than to help the women I've helped share what they've experienced with me. So it was like I was doing a life review while at the same time actually exploring why I wasn't willing to do more videos. So we just kept moving through, or rather, I kept moving through and just letting myself just drift with the thought of, okay, so I've been a healer. What does being a healer mean in terms of rejection, of being ghosted, of people just walking away for no reason at all, as far as I knew? And if you think about it, if you go back through the centuries, healers were either appreciated, feared, or totally rejected. And I've had all three scenarios in my past. And it was like at this moment in time, it was almost as if there was a part of me, my little child within, my inner child was going, yeah, but if you're too visible, if you're doing those videos, you'll be seen. And if you'll be seen, what's going to happen? Now, I've done the prep work for potential people turning around and saying they don't disagree with me, or rather they disagree with me. That's fine. I have no issues with that. I always take the attitude, I'm not here to make you agree with me. I'm here to educate and support you and help you grow in your own way. I am not here to make you change your mind unless you listen to what I say and can see the reasons for why I'm saying it, or can relate to the reasons I'm saying it. So there is that. There's also a part of me that was going, you know what you're doing, but who's going to believe you? We've all done that one, haven't we? And there was a bit of that as well. But as I say, it was more about having been a healer, being a shamanic healer, and helping women particularly get over themselves through releasing their self-sabotaging behaviours, being able to speak up for themselves, or even just being able to express what's right for them, or to have an understanding of why things keep going wrong for them, and taking what they need from what they learn about those experiences, about themselves, about the lessons that are to come from their experiences. So basically, it was getting me in a very roundabout way to realize, not that I didn't know it already, but to embed it in myself, in my heart, that being a healer meant that I was a guide rather than claiming the title of healer. I am a guide because I don't need to know the stories that a woman is carrying. I don't need that. All I need is to be able to understand her journey, what she feels is causing her the biggest problem. And the body will tell you that. And then to guide her to start connecting to, again, what the body is telling her, to be able to change the results she's getting by releasing what is present, that's controlling her life, that's influencing her decisions, that's telling her she's not good enough, that she doesn't deserve, that people will judge her, that she's not loved, and so much else. And it's amazing what we discover when we start to consider A, why something keeps reoccurring, and therefore we need to investigate. B, what is it that it's stopping you from doing something? So if you're wanting to do something and you're not doing it, you need to know why you're stopping yourself, what you need to do to be able to move beyond that. But more importantly, you need to know, once you've cleared it, what are you intending to do to then start creating what you really want, having cleared that energy, those thoughts, that repetitive pattern that you have that stops you. Just as I had to realize that it was rejection, and that rejection was of my own abilities to be able to prove, and I use that word lightly because I wasn't seeking to prove, I was seeking to explain, and there is a vast difference between explaining and proving. I have the proof. I've worked with enough clients to know that I can literally, through guiding them to discover what they need to know, to change their lives for good. So it wasn't that I needed the proof. I needed to have that understanding to be able to explain it clearly without a massive long spiel, tripping over what I was saying because I felt awkward about saying it, and to have that clarity for the clients to understand that what I do is very much about guiding, not actually doing the work. So there was that. So the visibility of doing those extra videos, of actually doing the work to create the videos, was very much about rejecting my own ability, my own skills, and even trusting myself. Now, I wouldn't have known that necessarily was present if I hadn't thought of the two friends that I was thinking of yesterday, who literally just disappeared out of my life. No explanation, no further contact. 1 minute they were in my life and the next minute they were gone. Or the fact that I felt that I wasn't doing the necessary work. And I'm not going to use the word should because it wasn't relevant. I could choose to do the videos, or I could reject doing the videos. And something within me was saying, you don't need to do them yet. You don't need to do them yet. And yet, listening to the people around me, the people that support me and encourage me, it was obvious that now is the time I need to do them. And yet I stopped myself from doing them. That is when a life review becomes handy. I took the time to explore with my coach, but you can do it on your own. nothing to stop you doing a life review on your own, of looking to see why I was not doing the work that would be beneficial, not just to myself, to get my message out, but also for clients and potential clients, and just generally to get my message out to be heard. So, a life review. I've given you one that relates to me. I can talk about a life review with a lady that I've worked with who hated public speaking and who had a massive, massive fear of public speaking. And I do remember seeing a video the other day on YouTube of a gentleman, I think he was actually Chinese, because if you know me, you know I adore China and Chinese. And this gentleman had to do a public talk. He literally had to stand on stage and give a talk. Now, he was probably, based on how good the Chinese can look, probably about 45, maybe slightly older. I don't know what the talk was about. I didn't stay to listen. It was more about demonstrating getting over yourself and doing something. Anyway, this gentleman was on stage with his podium and the mic and his notes, and you could see him physically shaking. And I'm not being funny, he was almost unable to hold the paper. He was shaking so much. But the thing about it was, even though he was in that state, he still went up on stage. He still stood at the podium with his papers and actually started to speak. Now, if he'd worked with me, he wouldn't be in that state. So having the ability to question yourself through using life reviews, so visibility, is something so many women suffer from. They don't want to be visible in the sense of they're not wanting, or they have a fear of speaking out, especially in public, especially on a stage. In this case of this client, she had to do a webinar to explain certain regulations regarding dentistry. Can't say it. And I sat with her and we run through the webinar. And one of the things I said to her is, nobody knows when you do something right or wrong. So stop worrying about what you're saying. Focus on what you can say in relation to the facts you have to share. But instead of trying to make it factual, make it into a kind of story. Because when you relax into a story, you come across calmer. You know what's familiar to you. So it becomes easier to speak up. It becomes easier to say what you need to say. She ran through that practice and I gave her some pointers. And I was also the co-host for the event to give her support, to manage the back office, basically. But it was fascinating to see the shift in her when she started using the information in the form of a storytelling, but making it factual. So she got the facts across, but it was less regimented, it was more relaxed. And she did well. She really, really did well. But I wasn't around for the session that she had to do last week. I was actually in Birmingham at the time, so I couldn't be present for her. However, she said that it was not necessarily easier, but it was a better presentation because it was starting to become familiar. And that's the thing about a life review. You can pick up when something has become familiar, when you're literally using that something to not do something because it feels unsafe. In my case, visibility through video. In her case, through speaking, even in a webinar that she was responsible for. But it doesn't matter for what reason. If you're constantly doing something that is familiar, you're not going to change anything, which is why a life review is beneficial. So, part of the sloth or beaver toolkit questions includes a yellow card, which is very much about, look at this. You're being given a warning that if you don't look at this, you will miss something or you will get a penalty. And in your case, if you're doing the same thing again and again, you're not going to change your life. So that is a kind of penalty. Whereas if you bother to look at the yellow card and listen to the warning, you won't get that red card. You won't get to repeat the same things again if you bother to look at what the review is about. So anyway, the yellow card of life review is, what do you say to yourself about your life? Now, you can literally sit there for 10, 15 minutes and write things about your life that either you believe about it, or that you say about it, or that you constantly do within your life. That there's a part of you that says, why? Why are you doing that? Now, it's been interesting because I had a conversation with Antonella, my marketing advisor, and I also had a conversation with my coach, Sarah. And one of the things that came out of it is, I am a disruptor. I like to ask the awkward question, why? Whereas most coaches tend to go with what. I like why, simply because it connects with the body. And the number of times that I've used the question why, it is somewhat what's the word I want? Oh, I've forgotten the word I want. Confrontational, that's the word I want. It can be confrontational, but that's why it works, because the body goes, oh, okay, this is different. What do I need to do with this? Whereas what, and this is my personal opinion, what lands in the mind rather than in the body. The body doesn't go, oh, what? But you ask why, and the body goes, oh, okay, I need to listen to this. What? Why do I need to listen? Why do I need to answer this? To a question, why? So I'm asking you the question, why? Why are you doing something that's stopping you from changing? Perhaps it's changing a relationship. And I don't mean the physical change of a relationship. I mean doing something different that perhaps creates better communication, creates a better response. Or it could be in your work environment where there's constant bickering or challenges. If you change yourself, you have the ability to change the environment that you're working in, that you're living in, that is part of your life. It works because you change, and therefore people around you respond to you differently. Hence why those two friends disappeared, because I had changed myself in some way. And I think I know what I did. I'm not absolutely positive. And consequently, they didn't like the change. So they chose to walk away. And that is fine. I don't have an issue with that anymore. But at the time, I went through that spiraling cycle of, why did they do that? What is it that I did wrong? What did I say wrong? What could I have done better? I want to ask them, why did they step away? I did actually send them a message. Why aren't we talking anymore? No response back. So obviously there was something that changed in me that caused the two of them to step back. Because if it just hadn't been me that had changed, they wouldn't have stepped back, not both of them. Maybe if I'd done something that one of them didn't like, that was different. But for both of them to step back and not have anything to do with me would suggest that there was something that I had personally changed in myself. And interestingly, I think it was a boundary I put in place, which played out in a way that I probably hadn't behaved previously. But that's sheer guessing. Or no, it's reflection and guessing. So a life review allowed me this time to be reminded of why they left, what reason I needed to be aware of, to be able to then find why I wasn't willing to do the videos. I am now. I've even taken steps to ensure that I have the necessary equipment to make the videos easier when I record them. I generally tend to just allow what to come in to come in. However, sometimes you need a script. And I now have taken the actions to ensure that I have that script in front of me. So I do not actually physically read it from a piece of paper or have to keep looking down and noting what's the next step and such like. But I can get that message out coherently in the way that it needs to go out and not be in total natural flow. But that's fine. I've taken those steps. Now, if I hadn't chosen to do that life review, even unintentionally with my coach and then with my friend, I perhaps wouldn't have reached that point where I'd already started to take action. So I've said to you, what do you say to yourself about your life? And I will continue. We can tolerate much before we decide enough is enough. I had decided this morning that not doing those videos was to the point where I had had enough of not doing them. I need to do them. I want to do them. And therefore, I need to deal with what was stopping me. And just talking it through created a shift. Reviewing it yesterday created a shift. And I'm sure that if I allow it to sit with me, there'll be another shift. So watch out. You might actually see some real recorded videos apart from the podcast. Of course they're recorded. What are you talking about, Karen? Hey, anyway, they will be purposely recorded. Not that the podcast isn't, but it's slightly different. So, the next question that you might want to consider: are you tolerating or moving ahead? So, where in your life are you tolerating? Where in your life are you moving ahead? The 3 questions. What do you say to yourself about your life? Are you tolerating or moving ahead? Oh, it's 2 actually. I thought it was 3. I thought it's only 2. So, what are you saying to yourself? What is impacting your life? That's just part of the life review. That's the yellow card of sloth or beaver, or one of the yellow cards, because there's 3 of them. So, now you know. If you're not moving forward, if there's things in life that are worrying you, that are leaving you fearful, that's not allowing you to have what you want or desire, you perhaps need to do a life review and see what you're saying, what you're tolerating, and what do you need to change. I'm going to leave it there.